Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome back to my channel. We are dealing with some severe overhead lighting right now, so that is the situation. It's wintertime in Seattle, so you know we're doing what we got to do. So I am excited to talk about my December wrap up today. December was a little rough reading wise for me. November I was like starting to get into a slump because I just read a lot of books I didn't like. And it carried into December. And then, as I'm sure you know, if you watch my other videos, I got extremely sick in December, and I don't like reading while I'm sick, so I didn't read for a full week, and then slowly got back into it. So December was an odd month. Still read some good things though, and I feel like I'm coming back into the upswing of like reading stuff I'm really enjoying. Like always, I'm gonna go over them in the order that I read them, not necessarily enjoyment, so just the order that I read them. The first book that I read in December is a poetry collection, and that is The Nightgown. This is by Taisia, Kitaiskaia, and this is published by Deep Vellum. This didn't really work for me. I was very excited about it, but this is a collection of poetry that reinterprets kind of like myths and fairy tales and is kind of dark, has a dark twist on them. This was just too experimental for me. I did not know what was going on in half of the poems, and typically I'm down to like dive into a poem and try and like pull out some hidden meaning and stuff like that, but this was just like, it was slightly too bizarre for me, so it didn't totally work. Some poems I did like, but I liked less than I disliked, so yeah, overall it wasn't great for me. But if you like dark, bizarre, really experimental poetry, then this is probably right up your alley. And I do love the cover of this. Yeah, I do like the cover a lot. I like the frog with the tongue winding around, but yeah, not a win for me. So sad to start out with one that isn't a win, but that's how it goes sometimes. The next book that I read was a big win for me, and that is a short story collection called That We May Live. The title is very small on the bottom. This is a collection of Chinese speculative short stories from various authors and translators. This is published by Two Lines Press, which is a small press publisher that does only translations. And they're really unique because they ask the translators what type of work they've been seeing that hasn't been getting published, that they think deserves to be published. And that's how they come up with these collections, which I think is just so cool. This is part of the Calico series where they do that, and I adored this. I thought it was great. I like speculative fiction, but only in certain ways. I do like it to kind of have a point or like something it's trying to make us think about, and these definitely do that. I enjoyed the entire collection. I had 3 favorites, and I've looked up work by those 3 authors so I can get more of it, which is a great part of reading an anthology like this. My favorite one in here follows a woman who is a news anchor, and she's having all these spiraling thoughts about youth and beauty and how she's getting older and thinks that she's going to be phased out of her career because she's really only appreciated for her beauty and for her voice. So she has this like kind of magical, ethereal voice that she works very hard on cultivating, and that is what has given her a level of stardom and power in society. So it's about her trying to hold on to that and the ways that men in particular take advantage of that. So I really enjoyed that story a lot. There's also a story about a fermented beverage that is passed down through the generations that has some mysterious qualities. That's the first story in here. And yeah, I overall really highly enjoyed and recommend. The production of this is also stunning. I mentioned this in my book haul, but each story starts with a page like this, and it has the title, the author, translator, and then it has a quote that it's pulled out from the story, and it has the quote in English and Chinese. It also has the title in Chinese as well. So I just love this. I loved everything about it. It really made me think. It was fun to read, which I just needed something that I really wanted to turn the pages. So definitely pick this up if you're interested in speculative Chinese short story collections. It's for you. All right, the third book that I finished in December was part of a video that I already put out, and that is The Fire This Time. This is an anthology that contains essays and poetry about race in America, and it's edited by Jesmyn Ward. This one is published by Simon & Schuster, and this was also fantastic. This I gave 5 stars. I think it was such an interesting look at past, present, and future when we examine racial tensions in America. There's also some reflection on James Baldwin, because obviously this is, tied to that. It was done 50 years in the future, so on the 50th anniversary of his essay collection coming out. And yeah, I just loved it. I love the wide range of takes and voices in this. A lot of them really made me think, even though this collection came out like 5 or 6 years ago or something like that. I still think it's really relevant to today. So highly encourage you to pick this up if you're interested in learning more about race, and thought it was great. So that is The Fire This Time. The fourth book that I read in December was a tiny little thing, and that is Weasels in the Attic. This is by Hiroko Oyamada, and it's translated from the Japanese by David Boyd. And this is the third Hiroko Oyamada novel that I have read this year. I've read all of the novels that have been translated, which are the 3, and this one was my favorite of all 3 that I've read this year. This is technically classified as a short story collection. It has 3 stories in it that are interlinked, and it follows the same cast in each one. So the first one involves exotic fish and kind of a dinner situation and a new bride. The second one follows a couple who has just moved out into the mountains, and it's very snowy and atmospheric, and they're having a weasel infestation problem, hence the Weasels in the Attic title. And then the third one has all of the characters coming together at that house having a dinner party. So there are a bunch of overlapping themes. In particular, this really talks about infertility. So know that going in. I think it is a great take on infertility and a good experience to add to the collection of experiences out there. So I highly recommend it if you're interested in learning more about that. And yeah, I just think it was done really well. This one was also, I don't know, more exciting than the other 2, and I think that's part of why I liked it more. I'm not sure if that's because it was broken up into the 3 stories, so there was a little bit more like plotty things going on, like meta-narrative things going on, but I very much enjoyed this and would highly recommend if this sounds interesting to you. There are some like creepy elements going on in the background, not scary, but just kind of unsettling, and that's something that Hiroko Oyamada has in all of her novels. So yeah, I highly recommend this one if you're wanting to read a Hiroko Oyamada book. I would recommend starting with this one. I think it's a really good place to start. Okay, and the next book that I read was a hard no from me. I'm actually surprised that I finished it, and that is The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse. This is published by, who did this? Pamela Dorman Books, so Viking. So this, my God, what do I even say? I gave this 2 stars, which I think I've given only like 5 books 2 stars this year, because I will DNF a book. I'm not scared to DNF a book. So normally I'm DNFing it before that. But oh man. So in the first 50 pages of this, so much shit happens. It's like whiplash. I did not even understand why all of that was putting in. So within the first 50 pages, 2 people die. There is a crumbling relationship between the main character. She insinuates that her brother, who she's estranged from but is now seeing, is somehow maybe a serial killer and murdered her other brother. Plus, she also just recently went through a traumatic event at work where a different serial killer attacked her and she barely got out with her life. And then, also, surprise, within the first 50 pages, she shows up and the person her brother is about to marry, the one that she thinks might have killed her other brother, is someone that she knows from her childhood, but they haven't told anyone that yet. Like, what? That is way too much stuff to be building in the first 50 pages. It was like farcical at that point, like how much shit you could throw into it to make it plotty. I don't know. This book is like 400 pages, so there's a lot that happens after that. That's not spoilers. Again, that's all in the beginning. And it's just like, I was so thrown off. It was like, I don't know. And then I continued reading because some part of me was like, how the hell is she going to make all of this work in the end? Like, how is she going to wrap up all of these like little mysteries she's put in? Yeah, it did not pay off. It did not pay off in the end, is what I'll say. This is a series I'm not going to continue on. If you love this series, kudos to you. I think if you love super plot heavy, like really just wild and I don't know, like extremely messy, we're here for a good time type of book, I respect that, and this is probably for you. But I just could not believe what I was reading, so it didn't work for me. The next book was definitely a win, and if you watched my best books of the year video, this was on it. This is actually number 15 on that list, and that is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. This is published by Black Cat, and it's so good. It really is so good. This is also pretty long. It's over 400 pages. I think it's like 450, and this follows a large group of Black British women, and each section is sort of its own story into itself. I would classify this as interlinking short stories, but I don't think most people do. But each one follows a woman at a certain time in their life, and then the next chunk right after that will follow a woman who was a side character in the story right before it. So all of them are connected in some way. So that's kind of how the format is laid out. And I liked that it did that. I like that you got a little bit about one character right before you got a more in-depth character analysis of them. I think this just does a great job of showing a lot of intersectionality between Black British women, and that's great to see and have that representation of. And the writing is also done really well. It's interesting for such a long book to read. I never got bored. Part of that has to do with like you're constantly getting new people in to get excited about. I did enjoy some stories more than other, like following some women more than others, but that's okay. There was none that was like a glaring, oh, I don't want to read this. So I very much enjoyed this. If you like just like a bunch of slice of life stories about women, then I highly encourage you to pick this up. I think it was done very, very well, and some of these women will stick with me for a very long time. So that is Girl, Woman, Other. The next book that I read from the library, so I don't have it, so I'll put a picture up, and that is Small Things Like These by Keegan. This has been everywhere. It's been super buzzy. It was shortlisted for the Booker Prize this year, and it's a small novella that is commenting on the Magdalene laundries. It follows a man who is starting to realize that something is going wrong in his community and decides that he can't turn the other way and ignore it while the rest of the community wants him to do that and is doing that themselves. It's very harrowing. It's very heartfelt. I very much enjoyed it. I will say I didn't love it to the extent that some other people are loving it. Like, it wasn't a favorite book of the year or anything like that. But I do think it's definitely worth the read and is very affecting in a lot of ways for such a short book. But my one issue with it maybe is like, I don't like books that are so moralistic, like so obviously like and sweetly moralistic, maybe I should say. So yeah, that was the one thing where like, it was like, okay, like it's still very good, but like it wasn't spectacular. So I'll just throw that one caveat on it. But Small Things Like These, definitely enjoyed and would highly recommend. And again, it's so short, so like you're not gonna waste a lot of time even if you didn't enjoy it. So that is Small Things Like These by Keegan. Also very atmospheric and takes place around Christmas. The last book that I read in December was Pew by Catherine Lacey. And this was one of my 5-star predictions. Girl, Woman, Other was also one of them that I was trying to get through this month. And this I very much enjoyed. This didn't quite make it to 5 stars for me, but I still really loved it. This follows a person who later gets named Pew because they are found on a pew sleeping there in a church in this community. The community is very religious and conservatively religious, and one of the families that finds them on the pew decides to take them home. And this person is very racially ambiguous, gender ambiguous, just like really ambiguous all around. And this person is also not speaking. So the community becomes increasingly concerned with the fact that they can't figure out demographic information about this person and how unnerving that feels to them. This book was so unsettling, like extremely unsettling. I haven't felt that sustained in a novel in a really long time. I was so worried just at any moment that something horrible was going to happen. It just really shows the problems with binaries in our society and how people not fitting into them make people feel fear for whatever reason, and that is being perpetuated in our culture. And when people feel fear over things that they should not be afraid of, what they do in the name of fear and what they do in the name of God. I thought this was so great. It was like a really interesting like think piece writing experiment that I highly recommend everyone read. If you like unsettling fiction that is trying to make you think about society and question the way that we do things, I think this is a really great book for that, and I would highly recommend. So that is Pew by Catherine Lacey, and this is published by FSG. All right, we made it to the end. Thank you for joining me to talk about the books that I read in December. I am so excited to get into January, and I hope you all are too. If you've read anything that I've read here and you have thoughts, please let me know what they are. I'm curious, especially if you read The Sanatorium and you loved it. Defend yourself. Defend yourself to me, please. But otherwise, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.